I have seen growing sentiment online that people do not like seeing COVID in films, from genuine annoyance to actual discomfort. A lot of people were affected by COVID and are still affected by it today, and that leads me to the topic of today's video, the film Touch. Touch is an Icelandic film that released in May of this year, and it follows Christopher, an elderly man from Iceland who is trying to uncover pieces of his past against the burgeoning COVID-19 lockdowns. A lot of this film takes place in flashbacks from the past, 50 years ago when Christopher had dropped out of college in London. A lot of the scenes that are filmed in the present are cold. They are a lot of wide shots. We view Christopher from afar, whereas a lot of the scenes that we see in the past are filmed a lot closer up, to the point of claustrophobia sometimes. In the present, Christopher is in massive hotel lobbies and large empty airports, being reminded to social distance, mask up, and not to touch. Okay, it's spoiler time now, so you've been warned. The first thing that we learn about young Christopher is that he got into conflict with his school for his left-leaning views. He is annoyed about this, and his friends tease him and say that he should join the proletariat. So he takes this literally and does, applying to a local Japanese restaurant, Nippon. He ends up dropping out of college so that he can work there full time. This movie isn't really concerned with showing a job as a means to an end. It shows work as just a part of communal life. We see Christopher work, do a job interview, and intertwine himself in the local community. We never really discuss his pay or his finances. Really, joining the proletariat throughout the film is seen as the right choice. His friends make fun of him, but his friends are unilaterally portrayed as wrong and as racist assholes.
Who wants to join the proletariat?
Go on, get a job with the Japs.
Hvernig líkar þér þetta? Bara mjög vel.
Ligat Japanen är ihop.
Actually, says Touch, working at a restaurant can fulfill your life. Working at a restaurant is noble. Through his connection with this Japanese family that he's now working for, he's able to learn to cook. He finds a community. He finds a new passion. He finds love. And that brings us to Miko. The day that Christopher applies to work there, he meets Miko, who is the daughter of the restaurant's owner, Takahashi. At first, Miko is with another man, but as that relationship gets more serious, Takahashi forbids it, forcing her to break up with that man.
So that's what makes a relationship serious.
Miko finds comfort in Christopher as they had already been forming a friendly bond. At first, when Christopher works at Nippon, he is a dishwasher, but as time goes on, he wants to become a cook. Takahashi begins to let Christopher come in before the restaurant opens so that he can practice cooking some of their dishes, and Miko begins to go with him so that she can rate his food.
If I can make the traditional breakfast properly.
And who's going to be the judge of that? Do you want me to come?
Yes.
Through this, they fall in love over time and start dating behind Takahashi's back. Miko has a very strained relationship with Takahashi. He does not want her to date. We come to learn that Miko's family is originally from Hiroshima, and Miko's mother was pregnant with her when the bombs were dropped.
Dad and Mom lived in Hiroshima
When the bomb fell.
Mom was 6 months pregnant. She gave birth to me a month prematurely. So I'm still a hibakusha.
They moved to London after being outcasted from their local community. After a while, unbeknownst to him, Christopher gets Miko pregnant, and upon discovery of this, Takahashi forces her to move back to Japan, all of a sudden tearing up their life. Christopher returns to work and is surprised to find the restaurant permanently closed, with nothing said or left for him besides his final paycheck. Another employee says that they just left, and that is that. Back to the present, through lockdowns, Christopher is able to fly to London. He's the only guest at a hotel that is preparing to close, and he goes to Nippon to find that it has now become a tattoo parlor. After failing to locate Miko or Takahashi in London, he is able to locate that same old employee, and she tells him that she later found out they moved back to Japan, and so Christopher leaves London and flies to Japan. Most time-jumping romances and/or romances that heavily take place in flashbacks don't usually work for me, and so I was very hesitant going into Touch. Age of Adeline, If I Stay, About Time. I think these movies just kind of don't do well with the concept and lose themselves in the grandeur of these things. They feel messy and convoluted and oftentimes not even committed to their own gimmick. But I think that Touch works, and I think this for a few reasons. First of all, the movie is solely focused on two periods in time. When Miko and Christopher meet and fall in love, and when they are old and Christopher tries to find her. The movie does not show Christopher as a boy or Miko as a girl. It isn't concerned with that. They didn't put stuff in between, and I think that was a good choice. We lightly learn about Christopher's life after Miko, but not much. He had a daughter with another woman who died, so he is now a widower, and he opened a restaurant, and that's basically all we get. And we don't see any of that, we're just told that. And I know the screenwriter's rule, show don't tell, but no, I think it works here. The movie never loses itself in the grandeur of life. It doesn't waste time showing us stuff that we don't need to know to understand the relationship that he has with Miko. How did Christopher pick himself back up? When did he leave London and go back to Iceland? How did he start his restaurant? Did he try to find Miko and fail? The movie doesn't concern itself with this stuff because it tells you what you need to know. Another reason that I think this movie works, unlike something like If I Stay or About Time, is that there are no supernatural elements and there are no overly dramatic scenes where a character is screaming and crying at rock bottom because their heart is being torn apart as love is being ripped away from them and they're forced to make a grand decision. And that's awesome, I think. The movie just plays it pretty understated, and I think that was a great choice. I'm not saying that you can't use like supernatural elements to tell the story, but for Touch, the reality of this pretty basic plot is enough. In an interview with the film's director, Baltasar Kormaker, he tells a story of his father growing up in Spain and how he was able to visit when he was a kid. But later on, when he went back and visited again as an adult, he found that all of the places that he had made memories at were changed into different businesses or different things were built, and that it had become kind of a dump. And that really informs the choice to have Nippon become a tattoo parlor for me. This seems to be a deeply personal story that Baltasar is telling. How can nostalgia affect us? How can it hurt us? Nostalgia has become an interesting talking point in the zeitgeist, right? It's become a dog whistle for conservatives. Corporations are packaging and weaponizing our nostalgia to sell us a bunch of hollow crap, and breakup gurus on YouTube are telling you that nostalgia is a trap. You need to avoid it because it's bad and it keeps you stuck. Obviously, not everyone holds these opinions, and a lot of people still partake in some yearning and maladaptive daydreaming, as do I. But for the most part, nostalgia has become sort of demonized. Christopher and Miko were just trying to find themselves against the societal expectations and familial pressures they experience. And maybe the movie just connects with me a little bit more because I'm feeling that. I'm 23 years old and I've changed so much just in the past few years. My worldviews have changed and my desires have changed, and I visited the area that I grew up, and this beautiful field that I used to frolic in has become an ugly, overpriced apartment complex. The local restaurants that I used to love have become chains, and the wind just doesn't blow quite as freely as it passes through the ever-growing suburban sprawl. At the end of the film, Christopher is able to find Miko, and after some hesitation, they break COVID social distancing and embrace. They touch. Miko explains that her dad was worried that her baby couldn't possibly be healthy because of the radiation poisoning she might have. When Miko and Takahashi got back to Japan, he forced her to put it up for adoption, and she did. Miko has now tracked him down just as Christopher has tracked her down. He works at a restaurant and she's now a regular there. She has never told her son who she is just happy that he's healthy. She brings Christopher to eat there and they're able to see him, Christopher seeing the son that he never even knew he had. After this, they walk down the street, Christopher singing her a song that he sung 50 years ago at Nippon, And with that, the movie closes. I don't think that Touch is a perfect movie. It definitely loses steam at certain points, and for Miko being a full-on deuteragonist, she really isn't fleshed out nearly as much as Christopher gets to be. But I do think it's a movie worth watching, and it's a movie that made me think. It is also a beautiful movie. Every shot is constructed with care and thought. Koki and Palmi Karakaru, who play both Miko and Christopher respectively, are amazing, and both of them are very green actors, and they're great. They have wonderful chemistry, and both play the roles well. I'm excited to see how their careers blossom. But as I said in the beginning of the movie, I'm interested in the public discomfort with COVID being in movies. Now, obviously not everyone holds this discomfort, and generally Touch was very positively received, so I'm gonna paint with more broad strokes now. But I do want to hone in on the detail of Miko being in her mother's womb as the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima. Miko's family were outcast from their local community. They are hibakusha, or survivors of the bomb. Even to this day, a lot of Japanese people are discriminated against due to misinformation and fear surrounding how radiation poisoning works. And that choice strikes me as it mirrors the present of COVID-19. Which is also something that a lot of people are still incredibly misinformed on. Now, don't twist my words. I'm not saying that COVID and the bombs dropped on Japan have equal or worse or better impacts than each other, but it is an interesting choice and something to ponder, which leads me to Godzilla, very famously a metaphor for those bombings. But is that really the whole picture? The original Godzilla opens with a fishing boat being subject to extreme radiation. This comes directly after the United States nuclear bombing at Bikini Atoll, subjecting Lucky Dragon 5 to nuclear radiation. I'm not going to give a full history lesson, but if you don't know what Operation Crossroads is, basically, the United States from 1948 to 1956 were testing atomic weapons at the island Bikini Atoll. Lucky Dragon 5 was a Japanese tuna fishing boat that got caught up in one of these blasts, and all 23 men on board came down with radiation poisoning. This reignited the public's fear of nuclear weapons just 9 years after the end of World War II. Lucky Dragon 5 was exposed to this radiation on March 1st, 1954, and just 7 months later, in October of that year, Godzilla was released. For all intents and purposes, it could be assumed that Godzilla is more of an overall commentary on Japan's relationship with nuclear weapons and the civil unrest that caused. Producer of the original film, Tanaka Tamayuki, has said that Lucky Dragon 5 was something that he tied his vision of the film to. Direction was given to the creation of the Godzilla designs that it needed to be inspired by the scars that came from radiation poisoning. Okay, but why am I talking about this? Because when Godzilla came out, it was a box office smash. I wasn't in Japan in 1954. Social media didn't exist back then, and I don't read Japanese and don't have the means to go and translate old reviews from audiences. But considering the franchise that it spawned and the icon that Godzilla has become in Japan and around the world today, we can assume that the general audience liked the movie. The movie that reminded them of the horrors of the past decade, of the reignited fears from just earlier that year. And again, I really do feel like I need to clarify that I'm not conflating these two things. One is a disease and the other is nukes. Both of these things did cause civil unrest. Both of these things caused international conflict, and both of these things scared people. For so many people, being reminded of the pandemic that changed how we work and lived and that took our loved ones away can bring a very visceral reaction. Why would I want to watch that in the movies that I watch to escape life? But I don't know. I think challenging yourself is good and healthy. And I think that Touch is a great place to start because Touch is not a sad movie. It is a happy movie about love and nostalgia and reconnecting. Touch has a lot to say about nostalgia, but for the most part, it just says, do remember. Do look back fondly. Do be nostalgic, because maybe when your time comes, looking back on these times of love and companionship and community are the best ways to have lived a good life. In Touch isn't asking you to be rich or successful. It's not about work versus life like Click or every Hallmark movie. It's about work and love and community and conflict all working together to inform life. It is life. From joining the proletariat, Christopher is able to find love and passion and friends. Miko was forced to give up her child because of fear and misinformation, and Takahashi uprooted his life and destroyed his business because of this fear and misinformation, which is definitely something that has happened to people because of COVID in the modern day. Losing jobs and loved ones, people's lives changing radically. Art can be a way to explore these scary things, to derive new meanings from them, and to heal. If you are reserved to the idea of COVID and film, I would implore you to reconsider. COVID and so many other tragedies have robbed us of so many things, but we shouldn't let them rob us of our enjoyment of art.
Un